All right, I think everyone's seated and we're probably ready to kick things off. Hello, everybody, and welcome to A11y Bytes 2025, Melbourne. My name's Adam Sifsioglu, and I'll be your host for this evening. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Unfortunately, we had planned to have Auslan interpretation today, but we've had a last minute pullout. So unfortunately, we don't have that available. We do have live captioning provided by AI Media though. So that's at least something. And unfortunately, we haven't got the Auslan today. So before we kick off the presentations, I just want to say happy Global Accessibility Awareness Day to everybody here. And thank you all very much for coming back to A11y Bytes. This is the 13th year we've run A11y Bytes in Melbourne. It's the 14th Global Accessibility Awareness Day, but the 13th year of A11y Bytes Melbourne. So it's really great to be here with you all today. And thank you all for coming back, and for anyone who's new and for whom it's the first time. Show of hands, anyone in the room for it's the first time? Thank you all very much for coming. So I'm going to hand over to a Bupa rep to do a bit of housekeeping. But before I do that, I just want to say a really quick thank you to Bupa for hosting this. You guys are really big supporters of ours, both here at A11y Bytes and also the Melbourne meetup, which I also organise. So thank you very much for the support you've provided us over the years and the support you continue to provide us.
Hello, I'm Benny, General Manager here at Digital Experience. Nice to see you all. Bathrooms are this way. Exit is that way. And presentation is here. We have food, drinks, enjoy. I hope it's a great presentation today. And if anyone's interested in talking about digital accessibility and some potential roles and whatnot, we're building a team out here at Bupa, Recruitment Hook. Don't hesitate to touch base. Enjoy the night.
Thanks, Benny. All right, so we're going to change things up a little bit tonight. So we've got 4 presentations. So we'll do the first 2 presentations and then we'll take a bit of a break. We'll come back for the last 2 presentations, and then we're going to finish things off with a bit of an audience Q&A with all of the speakers, which I haven't warned them about, unfortunately, but it should be all right. It's just a bit of a general chat. All right, so let's get things kicked off. Our first speaker this evening is Jacinta Gregory. I'm not going to do intros. I'm going to let people introduce themselves, and what I will do is not take that off their presentation. I will take that off their presentation time, so they get their full 10 minutes.
Well, I worked it into my 10 minutes, so.
Do you think you got a mic over there, or do you want this one?
I got some.
Right, thank you, Jacinta.
No. Press it on. Hello. Hi everyone, my name is Jacinta and I'm a user researcher at Entropia, and I have a clicker. And I don't like carousels. Especially large carousels like this one and 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 this one.
Thanks for not putting Bupa's on it.
I can read the room. And I'm going to tell you why, but first I want you to meet Jacob. Jacob is made up from different user research projects that have involved a participant using a screen reader navigating a large carousel. Now, Jacob lives alone. He wants some health insurance. He wants coverage for dental surgery, and he gets a little bit of decision paralysis trying to make decisions. So he really likes to do his research before he commits to something. He's also blind. He uses JAWS on Windows, and he's probably in a bit more of the advanced range for a JAWS user. So he knows a few little tips and tricks. And he uses his iPhone mostly for calls and texts. He's not really much of a fan of touch devices. Now, today he wants to buy some health insurance online. So this is a demo page of a new venture, Entropy Health Insurance. Adam, I'm sure you're aware. On the page, there's a carousel with 3 types of cover in view, although more coverage types are available off screen. Now, the cover options have a lot of inclusions and exclusions, which you would normally scroll down to see, but for the purposes of this example, I've just made them visible. And Jacob has come to choose his hospital cover. He reckons Entropy Health Insurance is a way to go. There is a deal today, by the way, if you're interested. And yeah, so when he got to this page, as I said, he was interested in dental surgery. So he used the find function in JAWS to take him to the first instance of dental surgery. He landed here. He used, once he got there, he found, oh, what's happening? Oh no, I've given away my secrets. Oh, I need to scroll down. I've too many big notes. The font is huge because I can't see. When he got to dental surgery, JAWS announced that it wasn't included. So he thought, well, I'll keep searching using the find function in JAWS until he lands on one that says it is included. Once he got there, he thought, great, I found a plan that hasn't included, but I don't know what plan that is or how much it costs. So he thought, well, that information is probably above this. So he'll track backwards. And he went up and 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 up. He didn't want to use headings because he knew that there'll be a lot of content on the page. Headings being a bit of a shortcut way to navigate the page, because he thought there'd be a lot of content. He didn't want to get himself lost. So he decided to do the manual way. Once he got to the top, he realized that there's a bunch of different headings and, Hospital Silver Plus, that might be the name of the plan. Hospital Silver, I don't know what that means. So he decided to track the page using headings to investigate a little bit further and figure out what was going on with the name of the plans. So he browsed by plans a little bit more. And then he figured out, okay, Hospital Silver is something that he doesn't know, and Hospital Silver Basic, that must be the name of the plan. Cool. So he figured out what the name of the plan is. Next, he needed to figure out, okay, so which plan is this? It doesn't include dental surgery once again, because still he hasn't found out which plans, or which all the plans that include dental surgery and all the ones that don't. So he would have to click around a little bit more and basically find and match up that information. By the time we got to the end of this process, he thought, well, I also was interested in exercise physiology for my extras. But I'm tired now. I've been through a lot. I'm going to leave it to another day. So he abandoned his task. Now, Jacob is made up from a lot of different observations from watching different screen readers go through similar scenarios using large carousels that often return similar results. Throughout the same user studies, though, I've also observed other recurring issues, not necessarily with screen reader users. And to keep things simple, I'm just focusing on the desktop experience for today. Mobile is a whole other talk. So for starters, users don't notice when more content is available out of view. And I've noticed this particularly with users who have low vision or might have reading difficulty, or they just don't notice, if there's shading or if there is more content kind of hidden, or in some cases where there's not really a hint at all to the side, other than maybe a chevron that's pointing you in a certain direction. And I think on this particular website, the chevron was pointing to the left, and that was the default of the page once you landed on it. Next, we have the number of slides in the user's progress isn't presented. So here we have 2 little dots at the top to represent 5 different slides in a carousel, which doesn't really equal 2 doesn't equal 5. As far as I'm aware, I'm bad at math, so I can't tell you. And HBF doesn't tell users how many options there are or whereabouts they are in the progress of the slides. Next, the product discoverability and comparability is really limited. So there's so many options, there's so many different rows and columns and things like that to all take in. It's really difficult, especially when some of that content is off screen, to be able to do a really good comparison, particularly if you have memory difficulties or moving laterally across the screen, side to side anyway, is a bit more challenging for you, especially to take in that information. And unfortunately, Australia, you have to call it out. When information is stacked unevenly, it does make a direct comparison pretty much impossible. Next, we have symbols and iconography are not really clearly explained. So we can probably deduce from Qantas that a tick means included and X means excluded. But what does MBP mean? I don't know. It doesn't tell me. And it's green. Why is it green? The same color as a tick. Next, we have navigational arrows are used inconsistently across different designs. At the top, we have Vodafone. There's a chevron and a circle on either side. Next, we have, sorry, Australian Unity again. We have one chevron on one side and then a loading sign, I think, on the other side. I don't know if everyone can see. Next, we have Amy, where we have one chevron on like a red chevron on a grey background on one side, but the other side is a red square. On Medibank, the chevrons and the circles are kind of more in the middle rather than to the extremes. And then on AHM, there's less and more, but it doesn't make any sense. What does less mean? Is it less money, more money? I'm not sure. Next, carousels disguised as tables that lack the accessibility of a table. This means if Jacob were to use this table, that his experience navigating it would have been much more challenging as compared to the example that I showed you earlier, especially because the column on the far left that kind of shows you the different treatment options isn't really well associated with the excluded and included statuses within the different plans. So to kind of take in all that information would require a lot of moving around, which would make things quite difficult if you just wanted to explore your options online. So these issues have a big impact on the user and their ability to use the site and their desire to be a customer. So what can we do better? This example from Frank Health Insurance, keeping content simple and front-loaded. So we have a more simple plan name. We have, I have highlights. We have a bit of a description of what the plan is. So the user doesn't have to go all the way down to kind of understand. And then we have the kind of like high level, maybe more popular inclusions stacked to the top. Next, just explain what the symbols and tiers mean. So Australian Unity did include a key. So that was a good thing. NIB, yes, NIB. Took you through what the different tiers meant, which I actually didn't know until I was kind of more thoroughly researching this for different projects, that the government has set tiers, and it's good to explain that to people, especially if it's their first time venturing into health insurance. I would have preferred it not to be in an overlay, but that's a different thing. Make it easy to compare. I brought up Apple. It's a good or bad thing, I'm not sure, but what Apple have done on this page, and these products have crazy long specs. This page goes on for a really long time. It's laborious for everyone. But what you can do is you can easily just switch what models you're comparing using the drop-down boxes. So it makes comparisons a little bit easier because you're just reducing the amount of information on the screen by just choosing the products that you're interested in to compare. HFB, so many insurance companies. Get a little bit personal with their customers to learn a little bit more about them, and they ask questions going a little bit deeper than the questions you might normally be asked, trying to figure out like what your treatments you're interested in and everything. And that gives you a bit more of a tailored response once you get to this page. So they tell you, they give you 3 options of 6 rather than showing you all the options, but they still give users the option to see all the products as well. And lastly, it looks like a table, just make it a table. It'll be really good if people just did that. Groundbreaking. Also, if you can provide a table as an alternative as well, that is, so if you still really want to use a carousel, provide that same information in a table just to make it a little bit easier for people to move around that information, particularly if you're using a screen reader. But it's not just, it just doesn't just benefit them. It also benefits other users that I've run testing with as well, who might have barriers to reading or a cognitive impairment. And so it makes taking in all that information in such a way a lot more challenging. So yeah, table's the way. Thanks.
I think the quote I'm going to take out of that is, if it looks like a table, make it a table. I love it. It's big fan of a good table for me. All right. So our next presentation is from Dylan Nichols, and it's tooltip versus toggle tip. but give us about 30 seconds to set up tech and switch things over, and we'll be with you in a second.
Or the slides are on desktop, so it's just
Like, I wonder every time. Okay, good. That part of it. Okay, maybe I can take that away with it. Picture at the end.
just need to.
But that'll be.
Actually, do you want to just to see every review the region? Can you stop sharing and share? Because I'm not sure if it's showing the whole screen or just.
So this one,
Let's actually, you know what? Yeah.
Actually, very well done. I was like, well, I haven't.
that one there. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. We share the file. No, that's all right. We share the file. Have you got notes in there as well? or-
No, it's just like I live it off the slides.
Okay. Do you know how to put Adobe into like presentation?
No.
Yes.
I don't know, but that's not sharing in an industry.
Oh, I can figure out how.
Fourth time lucky.
We could both work it out.
You'd think so, right? And in theory, I'm a tech guy. Can't see from here, but there should be a view from screens. So there should be a.
I didn't press anything.
In that.
I wanted to. I've been like, yeah. Paying attention to that discovery. So I
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Thanks so
All
much.
right, so theory now. How do I get back to it?
That's good. Thank you. No worries.
Hoping the clicker will work for me.
Maybe I need to focus on you. There we go. Yeah. Alright, hopefully it'll pan out. We'll see how it goes. Alright, thanks everyone. I thought I was last and there's no lectern for me to hide behind, so it's a bit of a shock. I'm Dylan Nichols. I'm front end lead on Bupa's design systems team. Thanks, Benny. Yeah, I just wanted to start with a few acknowledgements. I just wanted to acknowledge that we're meeting on stolen land, and we wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners and their elders past, present and emerging. Also wanted to say a big shout out to Utopia. They've been a great bunch to work with, and Sam encouraged me to talk tonight. And lastly, to the design systems team, we get to work on some great problems. A lot of them are accessibility related, and it just adds an extra dimension to the work that we do, and it's really enjoyable. So yeah, tonight my talk is on tooltip versus toggle tip. It seems pretty straightforward now that I present it, but this is kind of being like a process in coming to terms with like what a tooltip is and what a toggle tip is. And yeah, so hopefully you can come on with me tonight. I'm gonna start with like drawing a tenuous analogy between a tooltip and a bum bag. You know, like everyone probably wants to use one, but it's probably not a great idea. Maybe you can wear it at home, you know, maybe not when you go out. Use it on personal projects. So this is a tooltip analogy, or not anatomy at least. So we have a primary label or a title. We have a trigger, which is a button or an anchor element or a link. On hover or focus, and a container, which is just, you know, like your wrapper for styling. And before we kind of go into like why we have a tooltip, I'm just going to go on a bit of a side quest on the title attribute. So this has been in browsers for a very long time. You might be tempted to use it for a tooltip. This is the storybook interface, and you can see it's got a title attribute, apply grid to the preview, and it's got an icon in it. So the high praise for the title attribute is it doesn't really work anywhere. It's not accessible. People using touch-only devices, you can't because it's on hover. People navigating the keyboards, it doesn't receive focus, so it won't work. It doesn't work in most screen readers, and people find motor control impairment. It's difficult to hover. People with cognitive concerns, it's probably me. Shout out to people with ADHD. I get distracted by little things, and I'll be, you know, hovering it and stuff, and then lose focus. I don't know if that's a concern or not. So yeah. So a glorified title might be a custom version of a title attribute, which is our tooltip. So where would you want to use this? There's not many applications where it would make a lot of sense. Toolbars with spaces at a premium, like a WYSIWYG editor. It's like a title attribute, only accessible. So if you want to use like a title attribute, you've got to do a bit of extra work. I'd normally suggest using web APIs, but not in this instance. Use with links or buttons where the tooltip is not the primary action. So it's sort of describing what something's going to do. And I'd ask you, if you're going to use a tooltip, can you include a textual label instead of using a tooltip? So can you just work the text into your actual design? And it's a lot of work for a little game. Like if you could just work the label into your design, you'd be saving a lot of effort. So that's tooltip. This is toggle tip. It's like the updated version of tooltip. Maybe it's a bit more socially acceptable to wear a shoulder bum bag. I don't know. You might be able to fit a bit more stuff into it. I'd probably feel comfortable wearing one. So this is the anatomy of toggle tip. We're using like an information disclosure pattern here. So we have our content, we have a trigger, which is a button. It's on click, and the only thing that that button is doing is disclosing the content. And then we have a container. So what's the difference? So yeah, we're displaying it on click and not hover. It uses a disclosure button, so it's basically like a fancy accordion. Content can contain interactive elements like links and buttons, which can receive focus. That's a bit, some people will disagree with if we should still use that within this button. The sole role of the trigger button is just to disclose the content. So remember, tooltips not so great. Toggle tips probably what you want in most situations. So this is just talking about like the current state of our design system and what we've got. And I thought it'd be useful to kind of talk about it to explain like the thought process and how we got here. So at that moment, we have contents displayed on hover, and it cannot contain interactive elements like links and buttons, which can receive focus. And the button is associated with the content via ARIA described by. And this is a bit of an issue. And one of the reasons why we use this is we looked at the WA ARIA pattern for tooltip, and it's kind of in a transitional state, or it's just not, it's a draft state. And I think one of the important things here is to kind of, you need to take, I think, recommendations with a grain of salt and kind of do your own research and come to your own conclusions. We use ARIA described by, but it creates a usability issue in that you have a button, but the button doesn't really have any purpose in that. If you're using a screen reader to access the content, it will announce the tooltip and then tell you there's a button. And then you'll go along, and if you click the button, it's not going to do anything. So it's technically accessible, but it's not very, from a usability perspective, it's not very good. So I've kind of talked about this already. So we followed this pattern, and it wasn't great. And then I started dissecting this and went on this journey and talked to our friends in Entopia and kind of worked through the issues. And this is where we kind of came out at. So what would Hayden say? So if you're not familiar with Hayden Pickering, he's an awesome kind of personality. He's working in the accessibility space. So he'd probably say just use text. Like if you can just use the text, go that way. The second one is I think this went above my head. Like I think this is a creative writing exercise from Hayden, so I didn't really understand what he was getting on this one. The third one is great. Like he pronounces this in one of his videos as diarrhea. So it's like it's diarrhea. So you know, a lot of the time, like you're better off not having ARIA. Like if you're doing it wrong, it makes it worse than not using it at all. So and you can see that with our tooltip at the moment. Like we're using ARIA described by, and it's not working for us. And yeah, so he said all the above. So remember, if there's space, do your best to incorporate the information within your design. Don't automatically reach for tooltip or toggle tips. You know, they do have the role still, so I'm not saying don't use them, but be conscious of that. You probably don't need tooltip. You probably need toggle tip instead. Yeah, and check out Hayden's inclusive components. He's done a deep dive on this subject. It's really got some really great information in there. And finally, it's just a picture of Final Cut because he makes me happy. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Thanks, Dylan. That was great. And the quote I'm taking from that one is do your research, which is great, but also diarrhea. I like that. All right. So we're gonna move into a break now. We're a little bit ahead of time, so I'm gonna add that to our break time, and we'll all be kind of back here ready for the next presentation. In let's call it 15 minutes. Hey, welcome back, everybody. I hope you've all had some food and you got a drink. We're ready to kick off the second half of A11y Bytes Melbourne 2025. And I'd like to hand it over to Bobby.
Is this thing on? This thing is not on. I'm gonna hold it down. Another green light is on. Is this thing on? Okay, it is on. I'm gonna just trust the machine's gonna work. All right.
Bobby, go that way, man, so you're not blocking the caption.
I'm getting stage stressed here. My name is Bobby Lee. I'm somehow currently at Intopia, which is quite amazing. I'm here with my amazing friends, and I'm going to talk to you about something that's a little bit esoteric when it comes to accessibility. I'm going to talk about bridging the information gap. And you're going to be like, what's the information gap? Well, the gap I'm talking about can appear in many conversations or exchanges of ideas. There's some examples between designer and developer, designer and user, developer and user, accessibility expert, and just going to say everyone, like everyone on the screen, everyone in real life. And this might be due to these things, which is culture and values, mindsets and egos of people involved, skill sets between disciplines and areas of expertise, perceived ownership over parts of the process, jargon, specialized languages, responsibilities and domains of unique disciplines. When talking to others about accessibility, you might observe these gaps in knowledge. You might then begin to bridge the gaps with them. When bridging these gaps, you might start collecting stats from the World Health Organization, W3C, or LinkedIn newsletters. And there begins your journey into documentation, an introduction to building shared knowledge. You might start exploring and noting who did what best or what worst. What does good user research look like? Is there any good reason to use tab index 0 on a non-interactive element? Andrew, don't look at me. Developing and continuously improving upon a repository of knowledge is a great way to provide different teams and practitioners with a shared language and context. Ideally, your repository should include trustworthy literature and statistics, product-specific behavioral data, and qualitative user research. You can then treat this repository as an ongoing resource for capability building and understanding across teams. But what is being left unsaid? Bridging the knowledge gap can require more than just documentation and shared resources. After all, not everyone's going to engage with documentation in the first place. We should also consider what is being left unsaid in the interactions that we're having. Have you ever said, you catch my... I'm going to assume you're up to speed with the situation. I'm missing some cultural context here. I'm like not understanding this joke. That was a lot of jargon. You get the gist. You know what I'm talking about. This is communication, and pretty much what I just gave you is information. And what we're going to talk about is X-formation. This is, in a binary sense, how communication is broken up between what we say and what we don't say. Is this the right? Yeah. X-formation can be whittled down to the definition of shared context. A famous example reportedly comes from Victor Hugo, who sent a telegram to his publisher to ask how his most recent book, Les Miserables, oh my God, I've been thinking about that for way too long. Hugo just sent, question mark, to which his publisher replied, so exclamation mark, to indicate it was selling well. The exchange would have no meaning to a third party because the shared context is unique to those taking part in it. In his 1991 book, User Illusion, Tor Norantes calls this shared context X-formation, an abbreviated form of explicitly discarded information. Noranta says, explanation is everything we do not actually say, but have in our minds when or before we say anything at all. Information is measurable, demonstrable utterance that we actually come out with. Oops. So, what do we mean when we talk about practice? Comfort, accessibility. Let me pitch to you a scenario. You've been asked to test and advise on the 2026 edition of a data privacy e-learning course. Last year's module had a high overdue rate and a handful of accessibility and visual design complaints. This year, the department went out to tender and are working with an agency who agreed to deliver the module to WCAG 2.2 level AA standard. We're in a bit of a tight deadline. The agency will stop work on the course in 5 working days. So you start testing. You start testing the product with your current setup and only use your keyboard. It seems fine. But then you're given your first question, a set of 6 checkboxes and a submit button. You choose none of the above and hit submit. Then you hit submit again. Oh dear. The module has a critical keyboard issue and keyboard-only users won't be able to progress in the course. How do you convey this issue to the team? Or how might you bring the other party into your understanding? If you tell the product manager, the primary user flow is a keyboard issue, but then they tell you, it works for me. What information will you choose to discard so that you can adequately tell them what you mean? What information will be jettisoned to then become X-formation? Do you assume they don't know what WCAG is? Do you assume that they know what a keyboard issue is? Can you safely assume that the shared context between the both of you includes the knowledge that people sometimes only use their keyboard to interact with their computer? How do you know if there's an information gap between you and the other party? Ideally, as we've heard before, you want to meet them where they are. This is where the idea of X-formation can be useful, because what is being left unsaid? You'll need to identify your own assumptions about the situation and the other party's level of knowledge, as well as trying to identify what their assumptions might be. In accessibility, we might often assume that the problem is a lack of empathy for the user. But as many people in this room will know, appealing to empathy can only get you so far when you're competing with the bottom line. Instead, you might need to appeal to quality, to efficiency, or to return on investment. The X-formation might not be about the user, it might be about the other party's fears about their own priorities. Because when things are taking a turn for the worse, there can be many reasons as to why. X-formation. What is being left unsaid might be one reason. A lack of documentation or data might be another. At the end of the day, as accessibility practitioners, we are striving to meet people where they are to bring them along on the journey. To tie up that e-learning scenario, it turned out that all the parties involved had a totally different assumption of what the level of rigor required to be accessible and WCAG compliant could be. The robust discussion, many screen recordings, and lots of stakeholder management, we eventually arrived at a solution, an accessible e-learning module. Well, I'm a little bit slow on the slides. This is almost literally what some of the parties thought about accessibility. Accessibility means color, contrast, and font size, and that's pretty much all I need to do. Accessibility means that we make products that work. And of course, I'm sitting there going, accessibility means screen readers and keyboards and wheelchairs and curb cuts and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So in the spirit of checking our assumptions and identifying X-formation, you might ask yourself, what do I mean when I talk about accessibility? For me, I feel that accessibility comes with practice, and it is part of every practice, whether you're a designer, developer, product manager, or data analyst, or something else. We all have a role to play, which is why community is such an important part of developing our skill sets. I'll leave you with one example of community building from the German digital services playful and immersive approach to accessibility testing They call it, literally in English, pizza-powered accessibility check, because they get their colleagues to check their sites in exchange for a greasy slice of czar. Forget about lunch and learn. We've got pizza and peer review. All right. Thank you. Add me on LinkedIn. I'm looking for a job.
Thank you, Bobby. There was so many quotes in that one, but pizza powered accessibility checks have got to take it. All right, we've got our final presentation for tonight before we move to some Q&A, and that's Juanita. And give us 30 seconds while we set up some tech.
Quick was over there. We'll probably need to turn the mic on. Probably just turn it off.
Oh, okay.
Now you get to watch me juggle all of this. All right, so today I didn't realize I was gonna be the last person going. So today we're gonna talk about the accessibility SME is dead and why that's a good thing. But first, my name is Juanita Flessis, and I've spent the last 8 years running accessibility programs, coaching dev teams, managing audits, writing procurement language, yay, law degree, presenting to execs, and for the most part, just trying to get people to care. And I just moved to Melbourne almost 2 weeks ago. And I'm honored that this event with all of you is my first event as part of the Australian accessibility community. And I have to give a shout out to my wonderful partner, Chris, who's in the back filming, who's here tonight, and he's a huge support. And he's always willing to listen while I yap about digital inclusion. So let's start with the fantasy we keep publishing on job boards. Here's a real accessibility role. Pretty standard, right? They're asking for WCAG knowledge, audit experience, assistive tech familiarity, a degree in computer science or human-computer interaction. But here's what it's actually asking for. An auditor, a user researcher, a trainer, designer, assistive technologist, developer. So that is, 6 jobs in one person. Now, this one's from a university, and I kid you not, I actually had to streamline this so it would fit on the slide. So they expect you to lead strategy, do code audits, fix issues, write policy, manage vendors, build training, educate teams, benchmark peers, speak at events, sit on committees, report on legal standards. So better get those law degrees ready. And then promote a culture of inclusion single-handedly. 12 specialties in one job description. And you're getting that, yep. And you're getting that for the low price of 144,000 to 152,000 Australian. Wow. I know you're looking for somebody, so. He's saying speak to him afterward. All right. So here's the thing. When I say the accessibility SME is dead, and I'm just going to juggle this way, it's dead because it never existed. We wrote job descriptions for people who don't exist. and then blame the ones that do exist, that we have filling those jobs for when things start to fail. But the failure isn't them, it's the structure that we built. And, so it used to be prevailing wisdom that we were all going to magically train people and train ourselves out of a job. Let me ask all of you, did that happen? Look around. We're all still here, and there's still work to be done. And now, they're saying that AI is going to magically take our jobs too. Honestly, I wish. I, for one, welcome our robot overlords. It would make my job so much easier. But here's the thing. Tools can help. AI can support. Automation can sometimes speed things up. I am not in the camp that's saying that automation is going to fix 100% of the issues. I've seen the tools. I've evaluated. I can actually send you market research. They're not that great. But the thing is, inclusion takes humans. And the landscape that we're working in is not getting simpler. We've gone from static HTML sites to JavaScript-heavy single-page applications to reactive frameworks, custom components, blockchain applications, AI-driven interfaces, and now platforms that regenerate themselves using machine learning. Cool, huh? So that's not Web 2.0, that's not Web 3.0. We are deep into Web 5.0. I'm surprised too. I just found that out at the W3CAC meeting just a few weeks ago. So with all of that, accessibility isn't something you can sprinkle across roles and hope for the best. It's a profession. And not just any profession, it's a multidisciplinary profession. So you need engineers who can fix things. I've had people come up and ask me, oh my gosh, I don't know how to code. Can I still do accessibility? Heck yeah, you can. Because we also need QA testers who know assistive technology inside and out, designers who can understand inclusive UI patterns, content strategists that can write for everybody, trainers and communicators who can build community and get people to care. We need legal and procurement experts, yay, program managers, and people with disabilities driving the change. So it's not nice to have, that's how you run things. So just to describe this picture, this is me standing with a lot of the team I had at Navy Federal. I led their accessibility team. Also some of our champions there. Not all of them had accessibility in their titles. This was taken at CSUN right before I came to Melbourne, but they were all part of the program. And each person brought something unique. I have a disability consultant and branding expert who made accessibility human, something that people wanted to be a part of. I had a vendor manager who could keep his cool in the toughest negotiations and convince vendors to actually fix inaccessible products. And we actually had one vendor who fixed 346 issues for free. Exactly. I can do that for you too. A data enthusiast who helped us tell the story with data to our leadership. Designers who championed accessibility long before we had a program and helped us with our first user testing initiative. A QA analyst who became a CPWA. A brilliant accessibility engineer, probably one of the most brilliant I've ever met in my life, who is dedicated to helping developers create accessible experiences from the start. And Sherry, who needs no introduction, she led our audit team. And if you're sitting here tonight thinking, well, that's great, but I'm just one person, there is no program, I have no leadership buy-in, I've been there. When I started at Navy Federal, there wasn't a program and I was just a contractor. I had a QA title with like accessibility sprinkled in. Somebody was training me to do my job. It was interesting. But I never waited for somebody to anoint me to be a leader. I decided to create a role that was needed to drive accessibility forward. So I didn't accept no as the end of the conversation. And if something didn't exist, I just made it. And if I couldn't get permission, I did it anyways. And I asked for forgiveness later sometimes. But I took a lot of calculated risks and they paid off. So if you're on the ground floor right now, wondering where to even begin, don't wait for a leader, become one. Movements don't start with permission. They start with people, you. So that's all my slides, but I'm going to keep talking anyways. Accessibility is performance. It is security. And it's responsive design. It's just good development. And here's another thing I'm going to say that's controversial. Don't get the tomatoes. The food's mostly gone. Great. If accessibility is everyone's responsibility, then it's no one's responsibility. If it's scattered, nothing gets done. If no one owns it, it gets left behind. And you need dedicated people, professionals who lead in their domains. And if you're not treating it the way it needs to be and still hoping your one accessibility hire is going to change your whole culture, you're not building a program, you're setting up people to fail. And I've heard every excuse, we don't have budget, we're not ready for a full-time person, and I get it. But organizations have a choice. You can do things the expensive way or the cheap way. The cheap way is to build a team, shift left, prevent your issues, and build accessible products from the outset. The expensive way is to wait to get sued or for intense regulatory action, go and create a program, and then spend millions of dollars trying to remediate stuff, while at the same time continuing to produce inaccessible products. So all that remediation work at the end of your project means nothing. So let's stop pretending that one SME is going to fix all of this. That's a stall tactic. We need teams, we need programs, we need leadership, and we need real investment in people and culture. And the good news is we're getting there. I've seen it happen. I helped build it. And I've been in rooms where things finally clicked. Like at our empathy awareness lab that I did on a shoestring budget for like under $1,000. I can tell you how I did it. But someone there saw their loved one in one of the barriers that we demonstrated. And accessibility became real for them that day. No magical SME required. Just people with different skill sets making an accessible world. So I'm just going to say this clearly and proudly. The accessibility SME is dead. And that's not a loss. That's a beginning. The idea of a SME has always been an obstacle. But now with that out of the way, you can see the truth. That accessibility needs leaders of all stripes. And that each person here can be that leader. So that's the real future. Thanks.
Thank you, Juanita. And I think the quote for me from that one was ask for forgiveness, not permission. All right, so that kind of brings us to the end of our formal presentations. But as I said at the beginning, I kind of wanted to do a bit of a Q&A with the presenters with some audience participation, if we can. So can I ask that the presenters please come up?
So this is like a panel discussion. Nice.
And the presenters have got a mic that they will share. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this out with Benson from Bupa for any questions that anyone might have.
Mentioned an empathy workshop just now. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So it was an empathy awareness lab that we actually had people with disabilities lead. So they led a lot of the activities. We got the activities from various sources, and we actually had an assistive tech vendor. This is how we were able to do this for free. Come in and just demo a lot of their products. You know, people actually walked through and did different stations, simulating things like coming and using the web as somebody with hearing loss, for instance. So people who have the difficulty distinguishing background audio from foreground audio. We had this really cool table where you could actually use a keyboard that was vertical, for instance. Folks were testing out screen readers. We had mobile devices, so folks could test out screen readers and mobile devices, different display settings and such. Also real life issues that people might face, like cognitive impairments, we actually, or mobility impairments, we actually bound that was a fun one. We bound folks' hands as if they had arthritis and had them tie tiny shoes. It was a ton of fun. So we did a bunch of different activities. We had that running for 2 days, over 100 people attended. And we got a lot of great feedback. And because it was led with people with disabilities, the conversations that people had were incredible. And people really understood the value of accessibility and the importance of making accessible experiences.
Any other questions?
Is it Jacinta? Yeah. You said if it looks like a table, make it a table. This may be getting a bit into the weeds, but for that like particular kind of UI pattern, everyone loves their big multi-column nonsense. Do people code those to actually be a table under the hood, but then you sort of make it look like a carousel on the outside, or like?
I'm not a developer.
Okay.
So I'm gonna answer your question. All I can tell you is what it's like from the user's perspective in that sense. And common feedback that we get when users, not just screen reader users, but also people with cognitive impairments and might use other assistive technologies, will usually ask, like, I just wish that there was a table that I could look at instead. So just a nicely plotted HTML table, nice and simple, move around it really easily, just because to them, that's just an easier way of digesting that information when there's so much information you take in, especially when you're taking in something stressful, like looking at the health insurance, and there's so many terms you're unfamiliar with. The added cognitive load of having to navigate a carousel as well is just an extra step that some people would just prefer not to undertake. Yeah.
So for someone who wants that kind of a feature, do they, I don't know, like the marketing website was built to look a certain way. Do you provide a download with here's the table version of the thing, or like click a button and then it just becomes a table? Or what if you just designed it to be a boring table? Because that's what everyone wants to read anyway.
I mean, I'm not seeing it in practice. So unfortunately, I wish someone would come up with that alternative and actually put it out there for it to be tested and to find a logical place for it within the flow, right? Because we've got to make sure we can't build this thing and then the users can't find it. It's got to be somewhere logical that they'll encounter it while they are going through this information. And where that is, I mean, that's where you test that with users. You ask users, you don't build the product and then ask users, you ask users and then you build the product based on what they might say. And I think that just kind of pairs everything back. I am a researcher, so I do like to do research with people, is that involve them in every stage. Don't think of them as an afterthought. Think of them at the very start, interview them, get their perspective, ask them about their past experiences and build based off of that, rather than being reactive.
Oh, I was just thinking, just wanted to add, just from a developer perspective, you can make carousels accessible. It's just when you're conceptualizing it, you have to make sure that you're restricting the information you're containing in each of the, carousel elements. And the thing is, just managing focus appropriately. If you have a table and a carousel, that's a big problem. And at that point, just put the table underneath the carousel. And the thing is, well, the thing is, right. They don't need to know. And here's because as a developer, you can just do everything under the hood. That looks a little bit different than what the experience that the developer wants you to create. And the thing is, if you're just doing something where it's a comparative, you're comparing different plans, you can actually have folks add that to a, so maybe Federal had this, where you can actually compare different card experiences and the different benefits of those. So you could actually add 3 cards to and it would actually appear in the modal on the bottom, and that would actually take you to a compare table, which could be another way to handle that. So there's always a lot of different options, obviously test with users, but take a look at those, have a design discussion with your developers, your accessibility engineers, and your designers, and then pick the most accessible approach out of those.
Hi, Glenn. Just to ask you regarding the tooltip versus the other one, tooltip that you could press on. Sorry, the toggle tip. Yeah, toggle tip. I work in Bupa, so that was the first time I heard of toggle tip. But do you see yourself? Do you see us replacing tooltip with toggle tip, or do they exist in the same universe?
I think primarily when you think you need a tooltip, you need a toggle tip. So
Yeah.
there's a role for tooltips, but the limit it's very limited. Like it's like a toolbar, and there's not many other applications where it would be needed. Yeah.
Replacing
Yeah.
toggle tip.
Yeah. That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I'm using
Yeah, it's in development at the moment, so you'll have it soon.
I appreciate the specifics and the detail that is required that we saw in your talk, Dylan. But for like a broader sense of what good looks like, I'm keen to hear from all of you. We saw some examples from you, Jacinta, from HBF and Apple. But yeah, any other good examples of just what good looks like?
In design system, we refer to gov.uk a lot. Like their system's really good. It's super accessible. It's stripped down a lot, but it's still like visually quite interesting, and like and their guidelines are great. So that's something that we refer to a lot.
The US design system, as long as it's still up, is also pretty good. Also, the Accessible Developers Guide, I pull things from that all the time. They're not always 100% accessible, but you can get a good starting point there, and it can help you inform your conversations with developers. There's a great one on tooltips, a great article that has tooltips and user-activated ones, and it's really awesome.
I just don't like carousels. I don't have many good examples. But yeah, to reiterate, I often go to the UK.gov design system for good examples, and then just take in different publications. Like is it called Smashing? That's really good. Vitally is really good for all the stuff that he publishes.
I want to be super controversial and say, because they really, really, really want your money, the ATO. Yeah. So next time you have to file your taxes, you're like, oh, I can use this entire thing with my keyboard and it's completely fine. Sometimes it's like you're looking for the bare minimum and you get it, and it's quite surprising. So yeah, like I think it's places like government who really need you to engage with them. That's why I kind of referred to the German digital service. They're like trying to digitize everything that's coming out of there. So yeah, that's my contribution.
Hi, just out of curiosity, is there any other types of components of pop-in carousels that's not recommended to use for design?
Where to begin? How much time do we have? I think that generally, like what Juanita said, you can make things accessible if you put in the practice and the effort and the research to make it accessible. But like in user testing, really simple things can be inaccessible. It's just about being thorough and going about things correctly. If you don't know, get the expertise in, study upskill in those areas. So yeah, I can't really pick out one component. One's not coming to me from the top of mind, but so many simple things can be inaccessible, or things can be over-engineered in a way that is confusing. We had an example from user testing where there was a form of people filling out, and to the right of the screen there was more content that was available in like a disclosure element, basically. And the accessible label for it said something visual effect only, which our screen reader users that we tested with were like, what does that even mean? And also visual effect only, that seems really, you know, exclusionary, the language that's used as well, even though the intent behind it was to think, oh, we're doing something that's really accessible. So, yeah, it's just, it's important to find that balance, but then always test with real users. And I always say that as a researcher.
I have one, and it's something I saw recently. So if you want to break native details and summary functionality, start nesting them. You cannot use details and summary to actually make a mega menu. And we learned that lesson the hard way.
Can I have a go at answer?
Oh, yeah. Wait, you need to share.
That. What's your name?
Claire?
Yeah, sorry, I met you last week. So, yeah. I would challenge us to think outside of component and pattern language. I'll give you an example. We've got something called Blue Key. It's auth. I want to log into the front door of all our self-service functions. To do so, it's MFA, so like multi-factor authentication. You get sent an email that's going to give you a special code to be able to log in. Behind the login, the platform is cool, but the email is not. So I would really challenge us to think outside of a component and pattern perspective. Don't get me wrong, there's an enormous amount of technical specialist implementation that these guys have spoken to today is critical. But if we don't bring it back to the user and what they're actually there to try and do outside of that component to try to get the job done, I want to claim because I've had an issue with health insurance and whatnot. There's a fundamental gap there. So look at the experience. Emails are broken fundamentally almost across the board. Look at front doors because they typically make the rest of the cool stuff I've done redundant if the front door is broken. And yeah, give you that one.
In a lot of industries, or the one I work in, it's quite highly regulated. Have you got any ways or thoughts about how you can make something that's highly regulated but also accessible at the same time? Maybe that's a bit of a, you know, golden goose, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Highly regulated, so they aren't regulating the fact that you have to make it accessible. Usually that is the regulation, right? So the thing is, they are not incompatible. Often one helps the other. And when you think about government services or banking services and such, you know, if you do things like put in your RFPs and such, requests for folks to actually produce documents that prove their accessibility, for instance, if you embed accessibility engineers early in the process, if you do things like regularly train across the organization, you know, they're symbiotic, they're compatible. So, you know, in a highly regulated industry where you have to constantly, you know, worry about government action, the best thing you can do is build a great accessibility program and a strong foundation.
Sorry, I was just going to say, like, I mean, accessibility has so many benefits too, like, you know, like semantic code, you know, it makes it accessible not just to users who are interacting differently with your product, but it has SEO benefits, it makes it machine readable. It's just good development practices in general. And I think, like, you know, I guess like what you're saying before, it's like building a culture of accessibility in your organization. So I think like it shouldn't just be like ticking the box, it just become part of your standard practice. And to be honest, like as a dev, it's more interesting for me to kind of make something that's accessible, and it kind of has a bit more meaning to the day-to-day work that you do. So yeah, it's just part of the process.
I think with regulation, they often want you to do certain tasks. And as long as the task is done, then you can pass the regulation. I'm speaking from experience about financial documentation. And I mean, I didn't work for the ATO, but when I worked for Xero, the program would
create a tax document, and then at the bottom it would say you can sign this to say that you verified the information with your tax agent, and then you're going to file the report. There are reports that the place I used to work at would make that are completely screen reader inaccessible. So when the client has to sign it, they are committing fraud, and you are enabling that because but it's being enabled because it's not being considered. But ultimately, the task is being done. No one's going to know any better. But when you hear about that scenario, you're like, well, okay, how do we kind of fix this? Do you either start from scratch, or do you consider, can we, fix the print service so that you can make the PDF in a way that will be readable? But yeah, there are lines between the sentences on the regulation.
And this is where I want to bring it back to the security context, because, what does a person do if they can't access their bank account by themselves? They have to ask somebody else to do it for them. There goes all of your security stuff. So here's the thing. If it's not accessible, it's not going to be secure. It often is going to perform badly. And you're probably violating the law.
I'm not cognizant. Janita, but curious on everyone. You talked, we've been speaking a bit about regulation, policy, remediation, WCAG. I'm aware of WCAG 3 playing in a domain that looks outside of technical requirements. What's your guys' feelings on that? What's it look like? What's WCAG look like 2-3 years' time for the rest of us?
For those of you who don't know, I'm actually on the accessibility guidelines working group with the W3C, and I'm actually working on WCAG 3.0 with my colleagues. It's going to come out in the next 5, some people say 10 years, but we're working a bit faster than that to keep up with changing technology. But it's meant to be, we're rewriting everything so it's in plain language. We're working on incorporating user feedback, really making it research-based, informed by university research. We are also, the technical standards piece is not going away. But the conformance model is going to hopefully be a bit more practical and forgiving. So we're hoping to make improvements. We're trying to find the fine lines in which to do that. But the next round of standards hopefully will fix some of the issues that were in the WCAG 2.x series.
Great. I think that was a great discussion. Before I call it here, I know one of the previous questions was about components, and Benny, you're right. If the front door is not accessible, the components don't really matter. But one of the ones that I think really does kind of annoy me most of the time is the combo box, because it's a personal pet peeve, and I probably shouldn't bring that to these, but people try and do everything they can with a combo box to the point where it will auto-suggest, it will auto-complete, you'll have checkboxes, you'll have radio buttons, you'll have links, you'll have buttons, some of them will have tooltips, some of them, well, I haven't said toggle tip, but you never know, I haven't really gone looking, so some of them might. So yeah, that's one of the ones also, I think, that is one of those components that I think people tend to use as kind of the one thing to do everything, and I think that's a real problem. Anyway, I'm going to stop my mini rant here, and thank you all very much for coming to another A11y Bytes. It was great having you all here. Thank you very much for Benny and the team at Grupo. I should quickly say that we've also got the AliCamp conference returning again in 2025, October 28 to 30, I believe. More info can be found on the A11y Bytes website. And I think we've released some of the speakers already as well. So go check that out for some more info, and we'll be in contact about all that if you're on the A11y Bytes mailing list. Have a good one, everybody.